I had gone online last night to listen to some of Charm School's music so I could honestly say to you how much they rock. And I was looking at and they do, and I was looking at the list of members in Charm School, and one of them is Miss Lorinda Robb, who very randomly was one of the best and brightest colleagues of mine in graduate school several years ago. So I am very pleased and flattered to present to you Charm School.
needs more cowbell.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right, we're going to sneak some Sly and the Family Stone in here, if any of you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I hope so. And if you remember the words, please sing with us. Sometimes I find that I can be wrong. I only leave her in my song. Go to the bank, the drummer, and then makes no difference what group I'm in. I and everyday people, yeah, yeah. There is a blue one who can't accept the green one, for living with the fat one who's trying to be a skinny one, and different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, ooh, sha-sha. We got to live, sha-sha. I am the best, and neither are you. We are the same, whatever we do. You love me, you hate me, you know me, and then you can't figure out the back out in. Well, I am everyday people, yeah, yeah. There is a long hair that doesn't like a short man, from being such a rich one that will not help the poor one, and different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, ooh, sha-sha. We got to live to sha-sha. There is a yellow one that won't accept the black one, and won't accept the red one, and won't accept the white one, and different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Dooby, ooh, sha-sha. We got to live to sha-sha.
Anyway, thank you all for that. That was good stuff. The great thing about what we're doing here is that we get a chance to talk about a lot of different things. And in regards to a thought of what's going to be discussed today, I'm going to share this with you. And it comes from the book, The Happiness of Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. It reads, wealth itself has only a small direct effect on happiness because it so effectively speeds up the hedonic treadmill. For example, as the level of wealth has doubled or tripled in the last 50 years in many industrialized nations, the levels of happiness and satisfaction with life that people report have not changed, and depression has actually become more common. Vast increases in gross domestic product led to improvements in the comforts of life. A larger home, more cars, televisions, restaurant meals, better health, and longer life. But these improvements became the normal conditions of life. All were adapted to and taken for granted. So they did not make people feel any happier or more satisfied. Think about that.
I might need that.
Yeah.
Okay. I might.
Yeah, good to see everybody. When my journey from seeing the world through religious lenses towards kind of a secular viewpoint, not based on dogma, was somewhat accidental. You've heard me talk about in other venues about my problems with the Bible and stuff like that. But another thing that happened to me several years ago, I was working on a series of messages on the topic of human happiness. And in order to start kind of researching that, because I just didn't want to make stuff up, I started reading some books. Some of those are up here. I put a small bibliography. I highly recommend any of these books over up there on the board. And how that impacted me was I checked the bibliography of these books, and they introduced me to other books, and I discovered whole new fields of thought I never knew existed before. Evolutionary psychology, behavioral genetics, cognitive neurology, paleoanthropology. And I came to see that science was providing compelling, satisfying answers to human existence that I had never found before anyplace else, including in religion. So for the past couple of years, in addition to other things I've been doing, I've been reading everything on happiness that I can find. And so today I just want to share a few thoughts on what I've learned. I'm not an expert, just done a lot of reading, kind of bring together some of the thoughts that I've gathered, and then you're going to have some time to talk about it too amongst yourselves. So happiness is the topic. I thought about that passage that I asked Donald to read because I had read in the New York Times very recently. They had a big article about happiness in China, and apparently there's been significant happiness studies done in China for a long time now, and they've tracked it during the time of incredible growth in the gross domestic product and people's purchasing power, and yet happiness levels in China are not any higher than they were over a decade ago before the big move towards capitalism. So it's it's this huge topic, and it turns out that and Gary was very impressed because I put a formula on the board. I'm an English major, so it makes me really smart to be able to do something like this. No math is involved. But this is the happiness formula that comes to us through 5 well-known researchers in the field of positive psychology, the most famous of which is Martin Seligman. But this is based on, and the other thing, as far as possible from now on for the rest of my life, when I talk about things, it's going to be based on empiricism, because that's one of the reasons I got into this gig, is we're going to be about empirical ways of looking at the world. So this isn't, this didn't come from a New Age book. This is based on actual research done by people at universities and stuff like that. And this also means I'm always willing to be challenged, and we can talk about it, because we're all on this journey together. It's not, that's the way I see it. So H stands for your level, your aggregate level of happiness. First variable we'll talk about is S, which stands for your biological set points. Apparently, our general level of happiness is largely a heritable trait. We all know people within our extended families who are naturally optimistic, sunny dispositions. We know other people that tend to be more gloomy and downcast and have pessimistic dispositions, and we really can't do much about our biological set points. But it's just a given, and that's a huge factor in H. So in recent years, psychologists have been spending a lot more time researching how we can bump up C and V, because we can't do much to control S. And then by bumping up C and V, we might achieve kind of a maximum potential of happiness in our lives. Now, trick question for you. What would you rather do? Win the lottery or get in a terrible car wreck and become a paraplegic? It's not really a trick question. Of course you want to win the lottery. But the interesting thing here is, there's kind of a trick answer to this, because many studies have shown that in the long run, neither one would alter your long-term happiness that much. And it's hard to believe. But yes, people who win the lottery experience a big rush of happiness when they win, but the thing that we as humans do is that we adjust to our circumstances very quickly. And so lottery winners have a short, very big high, but then they have to deal with all kinds of other troubles, being hounded by long-lost family and friends who want a piece of the money and all kinds of other issues. In fact, there are entire support groups of lottery winners where, I kid you not, where they can hang out together and, commiserate about being rich. But they've studied this pretty well. Conversely, if you go through like a terrible, tragedy, like becoming a paraplegic, people learn to readjust their expectations in life. And after about a year of whatever kind of major trauma you've gone through, you're generally, this is, there's always a continuum, but you've returned to kind of the baseline of happiness of the event from before the event. So that's the C part of the formula. C stands for conditions of life, your life conditions. They do have an impact. We can have more control over C than we can over S, but still a lot of the conditions of life don't matter because you're going to revert to that happiness baseline. There are a few conditions that do matter in terms of our level of happiness, just a couple of them. Apparently, noise, if you live next to a busy intersection, we never adjust to constant noise. Long commutes. No matter how many years you've been doing a long commute, years and years of doing it, you still arrive at work with higher stress hormones in your bloodstream. So there are some conditions in life that we really don't adjust to, and if we can, have some control over that, that would help our happiness level. Relationships is a huge one. Good relationships make people happy. Happy people have more relationships than unhappy people do. Conversely, having an annoying coworker or living in a state of constant conflict with a spouse can highly reduce happiness levels. So, people say, well, married people are happier than not married people. Well, in general, yes, but if you're, in a horrible marriage in a constant state of conflict, then you're worse off than you would be if you were single. Because we never adapt to bad interpersonal relationships. Now, that brings us to the big variable we can control, and that's V. V stands for voluntary activities, not volunteer activities, although that might include that, and we can get to that in a minute. But we're going to divide V. So voluntary activities are concrete, tangible things you can do in your daily life to increase your happiness. And they divide them up into two categories. One will be pleasures, and then the second one will be gratifications. And we'll talk about the difference between those. Pleasures, and you can probably figure this out, is they're the delights that have a clear sensory component. Eating, back rubs, listening to music, cool breezes, sensory component to pleasures. The pleasures of life undoubtedly increase our happiness, but the impact of pleasure is not lasting because the pleasures of life give us a short burst of the pleasure neurotransmitter dopamine, and that's it. Dopamine is a rush for your brain. It's not a long-lasting impact that dopamine has. So the thing with any pleasure in life is you pretty much hit the point of diminishing returns fairly quickly. For example, if you sit down to eat a bowl of Bluebell chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, the first few spoonfuls are sublime. Right. Yeah. He almost said an amen. I almost heard it. But then if that bowl turns into eating a whole quart of ice cream in one sitting, you're going to end up filled with self-loathing. Speaking hypothetically, of course, not that I've ever done such a thing this week. So, the key to the pleasures of life then is spacing them out throughout the day if they're going to have an impact. And this is what the genius behind French cuisine. And I'm pretty serious about this. I don't think this is, because the French tend to eat fattier foods than we do, and they tend to weigh a whole lot less than we do. Why? Because they eat smaller portions, they savor it more, and they talk about it because the meal is not just something you consume, but it's an subject of conversation about how it was prepared and the ingredients and everything else, comparing it with other things. So it's not just about mindlessly consuming food, it's a whole experience. Cuisine is one of the great pleasures of life to be lingered over. The French also eat more courses and smaller courses, and this makes the eating experience more pleasurable and satisfying because variety is the spice of life. Remember I talked about the adaptation principle, how quickly we adapt to any sense of normal. Same thing, like eating the ice cream or eating a bucket of Colonel Sanders or whatever, you get to the bottom of the bucket, it ain't so great. So, but if you vary it up, variety is, increases the sense of pleasure. Same thing for Japanese and Korean food. I lived in Japan for a long time, for a while. I've been to Korea, and lots of, at any meal you can have lots of small dishes, of small servings, but it's going to be an amazing variety of tastes and aromas and textures, which makes it an inherently more interesting and pleasurable meal. So compare the way the French eat to the way we eat. I won't say the name of the restaurant for reasons that were being broadcast on the internet, but its initials are Denny's. And of course, they're famous for what breakfast? The Grand Slam. This linger on Grand Slam. What does that mean? What is that food gonna do to you? Okay, if you go to a popular steakhouse, I checked these menus out last night, you can get the Wagon Boss bone-in ribeye, which weighs in at 16 ounces, okay? Now there's a much more sensible cut that weighs in at 8 ounces, which is more than enough meat protein for one day. But go to any steak restaurant, and it's always called something like this, the petite cowgirl, okay? Now, if you're a guy who's not secure in his masculinity, and you're torn, you're gonna go with the, Wagon Boss wheel cowboy cut. Now here comes my all-time favorite. There's a huge chain out west called the Claim Jumper. Have you guys been to the Claim Jumper? I'm glad we don't have them here, but anyway, it's a big chain. And they're known for their huge servings. They have a half-pound burger with smoked bacon, fried onion rings, double thick cheddar, and mayo. The name of this burger, I kid you not, is the Widowmaker. You can check it out on their website.
That's kind of sexist.
Yeah, you know what I thought, Lou? I thought, because no woman's gonna be dumb enough to eat the Widowmaker, it's a guy thing. Okay, so now a few years ago, there was this fascinating study, one of the largest studies of happiness ever conducted. And this study was the idea of a Hungarian-born psychologist named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. You cannot spell his name, it's like 20 letters long. But he's really famous in the field of positive psychology. And his idea was this: give hundreds of people pagers, beepers, and we're gonna beep them throughout the day randomly and ask them to stop and tell us, make a note, keep a journal of what you're doing, and rate the level of happiness you're feeling at that moment doing it. And the advantage of this study was it wasn't asking people to reflect on an event they had had before. It's like, in the moment, how do you feel doing this thing? And if you did this, you get like beeped all the time, all throughout the day. But this is a study that's gotten a lot of attention. And some of the results, first of all, aren't surprising. They did find out that people are happiest at meal times. And they found out that we really, really like to eat in the presence of others. Okay, which is one reason why we love to go out for lunch every week after, we love that. But they found out that there is a state, an experience that people value even more than a good meal with friends. People experience the greatest feelings of happiness when they were in a state of total immersion in a task that was fully engaging them, that was challenging and closely related to their abilities. And this experience is what many people, we refer to as being in the zone. Csikszentmihalyi termed the word flow. He calls it flow because it often feels effortless when you're in it. It happens with a lot of physical movement, skiing, cycling, playing team sports, tennis, stuff like that. For many people, it happens while being immersed in music, singing, or dancing. The things I'm talking about, where you get into it and you lose all sense of time. Creative activities, painting, writing, playing a musical instrument, photography. The key to flow is having a clear challenge that fully engages your attention, and you have the skills to meet the challenge, and you get some immediate feedback. And that's the big difference between pleasures and gratifications. Gratifications make us extend ourselves. Gratifications come from accomplishing something, from learning something, from improving something. And psychologists tell us the best way to experience more gratifications in life is to know your strengths. There's a website, AuthenticHappiness.org. I think they have a great strengths inventory there. Because we may think we know our strengths, we may not. So, and I think this is a huge insight, because for much of my life, it seems to me that the conventional wisdom has been that you want to try to be a well-rounded human being. We've all got strengths and weaknesses in our lives, so you want to kind of balance them and kind of work on some of your weaknesses. You become a more balanced person. Okay, this sounds real basic, but to me it makes a lot of sense, and I don't think we do it enough. One way to become really happy, to increase H, is to focus more on the things that bring you joy. Some of you know that I abhor any kind of home improvement project. I mean, I'll do basic maintenance because I have to, but I hate it. Proudest maintenance moment of my life was installing a ceiling fan without electrocuting myself, and I felt very proud of that. I've done nothing more complicated. I am sure as heck never going to go out and build a deck or build an extension onto the house or do any other manly project like that. I break out in hives if I have to go to Home Depot. There's something about the smell of hardware stores that makes me hyperventilate. Bookstores, on the other hand. Yeah. Oh, another amen. What's with you guys today? Is it, like, for me, it's just the smell of a bookstore. I'm sure some people get like that with the smell of a hardware store, but for me, it's the smell of a bookstore. I'll go into the zone. If I spent an entire day at a bookstore, I would consider it a day well spent. I wouldn't consider it a waste of time. Even if I had nothing except browse books all day long. Now, under the old conventional wisdom, it would be more important for me to acquire some handyman skills, maybe take some of the classes they offer at the Home Depot. Maybe I should actually learn some names of NFL teams, which I don't really care about. But the older I get, the more I'm aware the clock is ticking. And there's so many bookstores yet to visit. And I've reached a point in life where I've probably been alive, longer than I will be alive. And some of you with more experience, I'd like to hear your take on this too, but I'm just finding more and more that why should I waste any time on stuff that I'm no good at, that I don't really care about? Maybe being a well-balanced person is overrated. Mm-hmm. The older I get, the more I want to focus on the time that I have on the things that bring me joy. For me personally, it's things like books, relationships, good conversations, foreign languages. I can't get enough of foreign languages. A few weeks ago, we talked about the concept of a bucket list, the stuff that you want to experience before you pass away. I started to make an anti-bucket list. The things I am not going to do, never do, or haven't, or not going to do again. Mine includes things like never going to a wax museum. I've never been, don't want to go. Never going to a NASCAR race. Not eating rhubarb again. How much sugar do you have to put in rhubarb to make it edible? This pie is delicious. No, it's like, So, now listen, and bear in mind, if you like wax museums and rhubarb and NASCAR, I'm not criticizing you at all. That's fine. We're about acceptance here at Oasis, I once knew a guy back in the Twin Cities, who, where I went to graduate school, who he bought a house out in the suburbs, and when they moved into the house, the yard was like a real mess. It was just like weeds everywhere. And so after they moved in, he thought he'd call ChemLawn to have ChemLawn come over and look at it, and they'd fix it up in no time. So ChemLawn comes out, and they turned him down. His yard was so bad, he got rejected by ChemLawn. So a little while after that, he was talking to one of his new neighbors who apparently has a green thumb, and the neighbor offered some advice. He said, forget about the weeds, nurture the good grass, feed and fertilize and water the good grass that's actually there, and over time it will become stronger and it will take over the weeds. Forget the weeds, focus on the good stuff. And that's exactly what they did. And of course, it didn't happen overnight. H doesn't happen overnight. It's a long-term thing. But after a few years, they had a magnificent lawn, even without the help of ChemLawn. So the long and short of it is, what they're telling us in positive psychology is that the key is, can't do much about this. If you have some things under C that you can take care of, like the noise or the commute or whatever. But here, they're saying, hey, spread the pleasures out a little bit at a time throughout the day, and then they suggest adding one more experience of gratification every day. This isn't like a big thing, a little thing. Baby steps. It's a process. And that's why I think there's a certain amount of wisdom in, the Declaration of Independence says our inalienable rights are life, liberty, and the what? Pursuit of happiness. I think that's the key. Yeah. We never arrive, it's the pursuit. There's this, in fact, there's just this phenomenon where once you accomplish some kind of goal that you've been working hard at, it's often anticlimactic, and you feel let down. And it's telling us that, it's the joy is in the pursuit. And I started thinking about all the themes of human literature, from Homer's Odyssey to Canterbury Tales to Huck Finn and Jim on the raft, and so many other stories, Grapes of Wrath. It's all about the journey. The joy is in the journey. We don't arrive as people. We're not going to arrive ever as a community. The fun is right now, what happens along the way. So those are my thoughts. Now, quick disclaimer, because before we go into just a little reflection time, is we do try to proclaim, we're upfront about being a humanistic community. We value humanistic values here. So where's the humanism in today's message? Because it sounds kind of selfish to be talking about our happiness, but I fervently believe that by working on your happiness, you're doing the world a favor. Mm-hmm. And focusing on your happiness is not selfish at all, because the better you become, more people are going to want to be around you. The more joy you're going to spread, the less likely you're going to become an axe murderer or something like that. So this is a good thing to do. And finally, it turns out that of all the examples of gratification activities we talked about, I didn't get to the biggest one of all. And that is the gratification activity that gives the biggest, longest sustained boost to happiness hormones, more than any other category, is when we engage in random acts of gratitude and random acts of kindness. But that topic is so big, it demands another message another time. I can't even get to it today. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for letting me yak at you for a little bit.
I've always been. It's a mystery to me. A would-be mistress want to be on your vacuum chamber. It's a boy to boy. One of the poisons in my mind is based on fear and guilt. Learn this if you will. Scattered prisms on the wall. Visions Changes return lens.
Thank you so much. Just a couple quick announcements before we, oh, exciting news. Apparently, we were mentioned this morning on national television on MSNBC. Could you pull up some of those comments real quick?
Oh, yeah.
I guess comments have been coming in. Comments of support have been coming in like crazy from around the country. So once we find the link, I'll just share a couple of them with you now once we finish loading. I can read, but yeah. I just heard about your group on Up with Crusades. We need more of these groups in my bigoted Greene County, New York. Okay. Heard about your group on Up with Crusades this morning. Congratulations. Keep up the good work. So once we find the link to that announcement on MCC, I'm sure we'll be able to post it on the website and you can find it. But I think, you know, I don't want to put like pressure on anybody, but I want you to be excited that we're giving hope. People are kind of watching to see if we can make a go of this, and I think it's obvious what the answer is. But I just want to encourage you, thank you, and let you know people are watching, and I mean not watching in kind of a crazy, weird kind of way. They're looking for hope. Does that make sense? They're looking for hope. And yeah, right. Yeah. So thanks for being a part of this. Hope you can join us for lunch. Am I missing any? Next week, our musical guest will be Sarah Golden, who apparently has been on The Voice.
She was a finalist on The Voice.
Finalist on The Voice. Just a huge thank you. TC is our director of music, and well, she got that promotion on the radio the other night, so told her we have to double her salary now. And, but TC is just line. This is to me, you know, giving a venue for talented, creative people like Charm School, you know, and supporting our musicians and artistic community is another humanistic value that we can be about. So TC just lines up amazing people every week, and we're excited by that. So thank you, TC, for that. So yes, let's give her a hand.